Somehow Palpatine returned. Again? According to this new theory, another return is possible, but how do we feel about it? And what are our hopes for Bad Batch Season 3? Welcome to Star Wars Uplink, your place for everything Star Wars gaming, the TV shows, and the movies. Let's jump in.
Just you reconsider playing that message for him.
As I am preparing for the podcast episodes, I go on a tangent on Google and Reddit, and I stumble across some theories, because that's a big topic that we like to cover on the podcast, is theories and how it would look in Star Wars, and how it would look like to affect lore and that kind of stuff. And I stumbled upon one that just made me kind of roll my eyes, but then they explained it through the comics, and it left me like, okay, this is interesting. It's not like a full resurrection. It is more of a continuing of the spirit. What am I talking about here? Apparently, Sith can imbue their kyber crystals with their own spirits, their essence, their soul, and put it into the kyber crystal. And that is a way for them to continue on. And they haven't detailed anything in the canon, but this is apparently something that you can do in the canon Star Wars world. I don't know the specifics on like how it would go about, but I do want to talk about what it would look like for Palpatine to return again.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
So we're not talking like Horcrux here. This is just like...
This is a way for their spirit to continue.
It's like their personality being transferred into something else.
It's not like you said, it's not like a Horcrux
it's
where...
It's not like an actual part of them. It's not their actual, like...
It would be their self, but it wouldn't be like a physical form that they take.
Right. So it is a Horcrux.
Pretty much, kinda.
Okay.
But only once.
And when does this happen? Is this like upon death it just goes into it? Or is this like a thing where it's like, no, I'm just half a shell of a human and then the other part is my lightsaber? Does it explain that? Or is it kind of more just like loosey-goosey?
So in the comic, and this comes from Star Wars number 42, a character named Auntie Fees, it says this. Quote, when a Force user creates a red crystal, the terrible events in their past are encoded into the kyber's very substance. The experiences, the memories remain inside the crystal. And apparently in comics, Palpatine has also returned before. So it's not new.
What do you know?
But this would be like an alternate way for the spirit or the events that inspired or made Palpatine could continue on. So when he bled his lightsaber, everything that led up to his moment of turning to the dark side would be captured in that kyber crystal. And this is something that in Legends was very different. The reason that lightsabers were red in Legends was because they used synthetic crystals, and that pure crystals, the ones that the Jedi used, were the various colors because they were pure. But the red, impure, synthesized kyber, that was the reason they were red.
Interesting.
In canon now, though, we've seen it on screen actually in Jedi Survivor when Dagan Gera comes back from his time in the chamber. He bleeds his lightsaber, so he takes it out and he turns it red and then puts it back into the blade. So in that moment, it would have taken everything that made him a Sith and put it into that one crystal. So basically corrupting it like the soul would be corrupted in the act of going and continuing down the dark side of the Force.
Interesting. I wonder how that relationship builds with Jedi/Sith and their lightsaber. Like if it just continues to feed off of their pain and anguish and suffering and
I would
hate
imagine
and stuff.
so.
Yeah, I would think that it would just continue to collect all of what makes them Sith.
I mean, if you look at it, even in canon, even in the movies, you have Luke's lightsaber calling to Rey, and that would be echoes from the past and the history from that blade calling out to her. So I think there is definitely something to that. But it's interesting, this idea that the experiences that make you a Sith get held in your lightsaber and your kyber crystal. And that is a way for yourself to be immortalized almost, as long as that kyber crystal is still around. And as far as we know, it is still around. Because after the prequels, we don't see Palpatine use a lightsaber again.
That's true.
He doesn't ever like lightsabers in Legends, in canon. Every example that we see of him, and it's explained in the extended universe in the books, Palpatine and the Sith look down upon the use of a lightsaber as a perversion of the Force. That if you were a true Sith, you would not need to lean on such things as a lightsaber, a physical object. You can rely solely on the dark side and the power of the Force. And that's what's believed is the strength there.
Interesting. So that actually kind of loses some of the weight for the lightsaber kyber crystal kind of imbued with their, like, you don't get that relationship as much with Sith and their
Well,
lightsabers.
You don't get it with Palpatine.
Yeah.
And that was a very much Palpatine and Plagueis belief. It's not all Sith, obviously. Side tangent, though, the reason that you can't just the reason that we don't see lightsabers used in combat where you just switch them on and then switch them back off mid-combat is because the Sith think of it as weak and the Jedi think of it as immoral.
What?
So it's a forbidden strategy. Like, you can, instead of having your blade ignited the whole time, you can turn it off and turn it back on to gain an edge.
Right. Oh, okay.
That's just a side tangent on lightsabers.
Fascinating.
Going back though, how would you feel about Palpatine coming back again?
I think we all know my thoughts on this. Please don't.
Yes.
Please let him.
You can do it one time.
Let him die.
I do have a theory on how it could work, but I think a theory that I would actually like. But I do want to ask you, what's your reasoning? Why is it a hard no for you?
It's a hard no because they've just done it so many times and they haven't done it well. So I can't foresee You
need to play Battlefront 2's campaign. That's all I'll say.
What? He comes back there too?
In a way, he kind of comes back.
Oh my
gosh! When you say so many times, what do you mean?
It just,
because we just see it once.
He just feels like he's the constant villain.
Yeah,
and everyone else is compared to Palpatine now, and it's almost like no one can become better than that villain. So, you know what? Why make a new one? Let's just throw him back in. It just feels like the ultimate cop-out right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think how they use it definitely is a cop-out. In Legends, it is a through line that Palpatine's constantly finding ways to continue himself, whether that's through cloning, whether that's through just extension of life, or relying even more heavily on the dark side to extend his lifespan, as that's a big part of his thing, trying to find ways for him to use the dark side of the Force like he can for other people, bringing them back from the dead. How can he do that for himself? That's a big focus for Palpatine. But they don't use that at all in any of the movies, and I think that is why it feels like such a big cop-out. I hate that the ultimate Snoke was actually just a clone that Palpatine used. It would work if it was set up in any of the other movies, but because they just randomly say somehow Palpatine returned, blah, 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 you don't need to know the details, he's here, he's the big bad now, that's where it fails for me.
Yeah. There was not enough build up. There was not enough lore in Palpatine in the movies for us to understand what it was that he was really trying to achieve.
But you can see it in the comics or this book that it...
That's why we're specifically saying in the movies, they did not build him up as this character.
A thing with storytelling is you need to have the piece of media that you have and you are reading or writing or putting on film or putting on a television show. You need to have it be self-contained. Even if, like in Star Wars example, even if it leads to something else or connects to something that has already happened, you need to have a full story within your story. You cannot rely on a comic that 50 people have read or a Legends book that is no longer thought of or even in print to explain this.
Yes. If it's going to be a thing, it's got to be a thing that makes sense within the
story
media
that is
being used to tell the story. Did we get a little tiny itty bitty little fraction of like maybe Palpatine wants to live a long time? Kind of, maybe, with that weird, like, when he and Anakin are talking in that weird, like, you get just the tiniest
Not from a
hint.
Jedi.
Yeah, you get the tiniest hint that maybe he's got some knowledge about living a long time, or at least knowing how to help other people live long.
Yeah.
That's it. We don't know any other like
in the medium of film, in Star Wars film. And I think this is going to be a big thing as we get further on into the Dave Filoni stuff, because Dave Filoni's like, oh, but we explained it in this like random episode of Rebels or Clone Wars. No, that's not going to fly.
No.
Stop that. Because like he said, and like George Lucas has said, anything off of the main screen is fan fiction. Everything that Dave Filoni was doing was fan fiction. Everything that the book writers are doing is fan fiction. Everything that the comic writers are doing is fan fiction. Yes, they can have a piece and they can inspire each other, and ultimately they can have a structure. But as we've seen time and time again, just because something is in a book does not mean that a movie later on cannot overwrite that. Dave Filoni himself has set up various origin stories for Ahsoka, and other characters and other writers have gone into Star Wars and made expansions on that character, and they have been rendered not like incomplete almost. They've been sullied in a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's beyond the point.
Yeah.
This idea that Palpatine can return, I think, is okay. And now my theory of how it could work.
Yeah.
I don't think they should bring him back into a physical form. I think there's a serious answer and then there's a joking answer. I'm going to do the serious answer first. I think that they could have Palpatine influence the next generation or the next villain of whatever the Star Wars movie is going to be with Rey. I think there's going to be echoes of that. And maybe that's something that Rey has to deal. I think they need to use Palpatine very sparingly and wisely, especially, and I think they do need to use him because
they made such a big stink
Rey
of it.
is a descendant of Palpatine.
Right.
And that opens a whole can of worms in terms of her growth as a character being tied to his growth as a character.
Yeah.
So there needs to be something there.
I would agree. I definitely think we need to see Rey take responsibility for that in a way. Because, it was so, like, last minute thrown in feeling that it was like, okay, now that we're all, like, come to grips, okay, enough that she is a descendant of Palpatine. Maybe we actually need to see some of this in, like, consequence. Like, what,
her
how does this
overcoming,
change
like,
things?
how does she bury the past and her past, and her lack of understanding of her past, and then move on and adopt the new name? We don't see that yet. And I think that needs to be covered in some form or fashion in whatever this next Rey movie is going to be.
Yeah.
Now, my joking answer is that Palpatine can just come back as a funny comic relief ghost.
Oh, I like it.
We just watched Mulan last night, so similar to like
the Ancestors.
The Ancestors almost, or the Dragon Dude. Mushu. I think he could be like the modern day Mushu.
All right, just following Rey around.
Yeah.
Like, hey, maybe don't do that.
You sure you want to do that? You sure?
That lightsaber would look way better if it was red.
Exactly. Never gonna happen. But that's just joking. Like that's what I thought of. I thought of the serious answer, and then I also thought of like this would be funny.
Little tiny Palpatine walking.
Yeah, little tiny Palpatine head. Be like, you sure you want to do that?
Oh no.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Luke had a very similar thing. My apprentice Anakin. Yeah.
No.
Just be this old senile dude.
Yep.
But moving on, We have that whole thing. You know what Palpatine's all about? He's all about the cloning. And you know what's all about the cloning? Bad Batch. They are Task Force 99. They're the rejects are the ones that were specifically designed for specific tasks and to be utilized together. Tactics, strength, technical ability, sharpshooter skills, and tracking. All of these things are wrapped up in this one group of people. And we are getting the third and final season of Bad Batch very soon. It's rumored that we should be getting a trailer here very soon, and I'm very excited, but also really scared. So I want to talk about our hopes for season 3, and then we'll get into how the cloning in season 2 can influence the story of season 3. What are your hopes for? What's your biggest thing that you want to happen?
Honestly, I really don't know because I feel a little lost in season 2. I get kind of what's going on, but I feel like I almost don't want to think too hard about it.
Yeah, so you can be surprised.
Yeah, so I can just go through the motions and be like, what? I need to know, I want to know what Omega is really all about.
Yeah.
Like, why is she here? Why was she created? What is her deal? Is she just the humanity of these clones? Or like what
was the purpose?
Yeah, why is she the key to everything? Because it seems like she is. Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to see whoever's left come together and become the band again, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to get our hearts destroyed by that. Probably more are going to die.
We're already down one.
Yeah. Hopefully. I kind of hope that he stays gone.
I think he's dead.
Yeah.
And if he does come back, I think he's going to be a zombie. Like the one cloning dude.
Oh, no.
I think he could do some...
Reanimate him in a way?
Yeah, something. I don't know. Or if they take his clone cells and just reclone him, but make him evil.
Right.
Similar to kind of how they did Crosshair, where they had him with the chip going and turning and becoming even more obedient. Maybe that's something that they do with tech. But
he just becomes the tech.
Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. I just think if they're going to bring him back, they're going to use it in some kind of weaponary force or something like that. Yeah. Corrupt him somehow. But again, with Star Wars, unless you see their dead corpse, their decapitated head, their limbs and arms and every single piece of them strewn across the ground and incinerated, and then the ashes burned again, they could still be alive.
Yeah.
Lightsabers aren't deadly anymore. Falls, we've seen what happens to falls. But in terms of like the story and the hopes, I really hope that we get into more of the Mount Tantus idea.
Yeah,
because that's a big piece. Mount Tantus is this thing in Legends and I think in canon, but I'm not sure. Definitely in Legends where Palpatine houses a lot of his discoverings and his findings and his research and things that he's discovered throughout his time through the galaxy and his searches and through his overcoming and capture of the entire galaxy. That's the place that he has everything. And it's connected to Thrawn as well, pretty directly. So I think there could be a lot of things where they start setting up these pieces and these Easter eggs that won't come to fruition until the time frame of like the Mandoverse. So I hope, because we saw season 2 of Bad Batch and season 3 of Mandalorian around the same time, there were some very similar themes that were happening there. And I think that was intentional in some form or fashion. Cloning is a big piece of Star Wars. Like we were talking about earlier with Palpatine, there is this idea of capturing the essence of the Force in this cloned, controlled being. And that's something that has continued to be researched throughout this whole time. So I want to see some more details on that. What does it... I love the notes around the rehousing of the clones and trying to find them as like new purposes. Like what happens when you are trained as a warrior and then there aren't any wars to fight?
You're specifically created to fight a war.
Yeah, you are in some form or fashion cognizant. You are able to make your own choices.
Yeah.
but you were also created with war in mind.
Yeah.
And now it's a time of peace, and I'm using quotation marks there.
Yeah.
What does that look like for the clones? And I loved that they noted on that in season 2. So maybe that's something that they pick up again in season 3 as a little subplot there.
I would think so. Because we still got...
Chuchi?
Yeah, Chuchi. Is it Governor?
I think so.
Governor Chuchi? Yeah, we still got her kind of in the plot somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, Rex is still going around. They touched with Rex a little bit, but not a whole lot. Commander Cody was there a bit. So
what's going on?
Yeah, that's what I really want to get into.
Yeah.
I don't care about like the big overarching things. I don't care about any of that. I want to see.
I do.
I mean, that's fun to look at, but like I really want to see like the behind the scenes. I want to see like make politics. Ever since Andor happened, I'm like all into the politics side of Star Wars now, like the inner workings of how things actually are working in some form or fashion on Coruscant. We see that with the New Republic in The Mandalorian Season 3. We see that with the Empire and Andor. I imagine we'll see it in future things as well, but I hope that we see more of these teases and these bits and pieces on how the Empire stays the Empire until it's overthrown.
Yeah, it can't end well. It can't.
Yeah.
Because it's just the time frame that we're in. It's like the Empire is going to win.
Yeah.
So the best we can hope for is that they escape and they live somehow happily out in the middle of nowhere.
Like Rex.
Like Mando. Like all these other people that are doing this. Like, oh.
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts, though, for Bad Batch Season 3, as well as Palpatine possibly returning. Let us know in the comments below or contact at uplinkpodcast.com. You can listen to the podcast wherever you find podcasts, and as always, may the Force be with you.